One of the things that I always feel a little bit sensitive about is when I get up to preach, because it sometimes seems so little and so futile. You know, a lot of people think that in the Christian arena, you ought to be out there feeding the sick, you ought to be out there doing good deeds in the community, and it just seems like so much of what we do as Christians centers around preaching the word. And sometimes I feel sensitive, like I'm thinking, what am I accomplishing? What am I accomplishing? I get up and I speak the word and people listen. Does anything change? And I know Brother Howard keeps emphasizing the need to be more active in practical Christian work. It rests on my mind at times, because a lot of what I do and a lot of what he does and a lot of what we all do revolves around talking. You know what they say, that those who do nothing but talk will soon cease to talk. I'm grateful that after 47 years I'm still talking. Maybe I'm doing a little bit more than talking. But I thought this morning, it's afternoon now here in Jamaica, I thought I would focus on something and try to bring balance and perspective to a topic that has haunted me from the day I became a Christian. I know we're settling down a little bit. I want to welcome the folks from Philagape who are getting here after their usual manner. I'm glad to see you all, regardless. Okay. But my topic today is the search for revival. From the moment I became a Christian and I began to understand the ways of Christianity, that has been my search, to find or be involved in something that was really, truly a state of revival. As a matter of fact, I think I'm not in the church anymore. I think I'm a part of an independent ministry, and even in this independent ministry, I am regarded as a bit of a troublemaker in some circles, because I'm always looking for revival, something different. And I think, I'm saying but I think I'm speaking on behalf of most of us. Most of us who are here are in one way or the other rebels against tradition, rebels against conformity. We want something different. We want something that is alive. I took a little trouble to look up the word revival. And I'm just going to read a little bit that I found on Wikipedia relating to revival. It says that Christian revivalism, is increased spiritual interest. I guess everybody here is there, more or less, except the babies maybe. It's an increased spiritual interest or renewal in the life of a church or a congregation with a local, a national, or a global effect. So it has to do with renewal of spiritual life and energy. Of course, the term is used sometimes to refer to an evangelistic meeting. I suppose people want to have a little mini revival, they would call it. Those who promote revival, they view revival as the restoration of the church itself to a vital and a fervent relationship with God after a period of moral decline. Everybody that you talk to who is a conscious Christian will point back to the days of the Reformation. They'll go back to the days of the Apostolic Church. And they may go back to some things that happened in the 19th, 18th century, and they'll say, those people were alive. They were fervent. But most Christians today will bemoan the state of the 20th, 21st century church. We do it ourselves. We believe we're a part of a movement that is seeking for a greater understanding of truth. We would say higher light, a better understanding of God's ways. But we still bemoan the fact, I think most of us, that we are not as alive as we would like to be. We join everybody else in the search for revival. I'm hoping that this morning I can put some perspectives on it that will help us to relate to it a little better. People, I think Brother Howard mentioned a few of these recently, a few weeks ago, and I'm going to repeat a little bit of what he says. Revivals within modern church history. During the 18th and 19th century, American society experienced a number of awakenings. Around the years 1727, 1792, 1830, 1857, and 1882. It seems like a lot of these modern revivals have occurred in America, of all places. I would say they desperately need one of those now. Amen. Amen. More recent revivals in the 20th century include those in 1904 to 1905 called the Welsh Revival. 1906, what they call the Azusa Street Revival. I'm going to comment on some of these. In the 1930s, you had the Balokole Revival. In 1970s, you had something called the Jesus People. I heard the name, but I never understood that to be some kind of revival. You had the Barrio Revival and you had the Chile Revival, which spread in the Americas, Africa, and Asia, interestingly, among Protestants and Catholics. So, I know that you, like me, take some of these with a grain of salt. Maybe more than a grain, a few grains, right? Some of these revivals, they make me wonder. Because, some of them had to do with a resurgence of Catholicism. Some of them had to do with extreme Pentecostalism. Things that I really am skeptical about, some of them. So I'm not going to buy into the idea that it's a revival because the world said it's a revival. Most of you are aware that recently they had something in America that they said it was all over the internet and they were claiming it as a revival. At a university, Asbury University, the students started praying excessively long. They started having singing. And the news came out that it was a revival, and people started traveling there from all over the world. And there was a lot of information on the internet about the Asbury revival. Christian leaders everywhere were discussing this Asbury revival. Eventually, they called a stop to it because the university had to go on, carry on its life. So they stopped the revival and they went back to normal. Kind of strange. If I ever hit upon the real revival, I'm never going to stop it or move from there.
All right, time to go back.
Yes, it's time to get back to normal. The revival is over. Very strange, but all of us expect a revival, and the Bible talks about revival. The Bible is very strong on revival. I'm not going to look at the Old Testament revivals because those were limited in scope, and the idea of revival in the Old Testament, while it is symbolic and typical, it is not my understanding of revival in the New Testament concept. As a matter of fact, the greatest revival I ever expect, let me just read it. The greatest revival I ever expect to see in the planet, hopefully in my lifetime, is the one we talk about in Revelation 18. I just will never be happy with anything less than this. Let me read what it says. It says, after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. It's strange because when this revival begins, the message is a message that seems to be a condemnation message, because the angel says, Babylon the Great is fallen, is fallen. If you understand prophecy, you understand that this revival actually is a condemnation of what? It's a condemnation of the churches. It's a condemnation of the same systems that have been having revival over these decades. This last great revival is a condemnation of the religious system. When it says Babylon the Great is fallen, it has become the dwelling place of devils. It's full of foul spirits, and it's full of unclean and hateful birds. And this is the kind of revival that God really counts as revival. But it is something that lightens the entire planet. Now, although I have highlighted that it's a message of condemnation, it seems to be a critical message. I'm not going to leave it there because I know there are a lot of people who thrive on criticism. Their religion is based on condemning other people, and that's not what I'm saying. Okay? I'm going to approach it from the right direction, but I'll get there. But I just want to point out that when true revival takes place, we should not try to predict how God will work, because God knows what he wants to accomplish. So what makes it a revival then if it is not the message? There have been many uninformed efforts at revival. When I say uninformed, I mean people start out to do something without a clue of what they are doing. Many years ago, it was about 1984, 1985. This group was just starting, even before Brother Howard became a part of us. And we were meeting in my home at Sinclair Avenue in Georges Valley. There are a few people here who will remember, like Brother Vincent and Sister Doreen. They were there from those days. But most people probably wouldn't. But we were having, the brethren were having a lot of dreams. And there was a height of intense spiritual excitement. And I had a dream one night. And I never told the last part of the dream, and I'm going to tell it now. I'm going to tell it now because it kind of illustrates what I'm trying to say. I had a dream that all of us were on a mountain. All the people that were in the group, they were in a mountain. And we were there talking together and having Bible studies. When I saw something in the sky, I saw the sky opening. I said, look, look. Yeah, I forget Sister Zemri was there in those days too. I said, look, look. And when I looked, I saw the sky opening, and I saw a baby coming down, a dark-skinned baby coming down. And some people were saying, it's Jesus. Other people were saying, no, it's the Antichrist. And then I saw like a scroll drop down in front of the baby. And it was written in clear words that I can remember till today. It says, there is a door open for you to preach the gospel in, and it named a certain place. I never told anybody the place because I said, I'm going to see if this is a prophecy. So I would never tell anybody the place, and I'm going to see if there was a door open for me to preach the gospel. And up to this day, I've never gone there. So I knew that it wasn't a dream from God. But it says there's a door open for, and I never told anybody the place, but it says there's a door open for you to preach the gospel in Grand Bahama. I've been to Africa, Australia, Europe, the United States, but in the Caribbean, the only place no, I never went to India. The only place I've been in the Caribbean is to Grand Cayman, but I've never been to Grand Bahama. It says Grand Bahama. So anyway, I'm making the point because it brings to my mind the idea that for many people, this would have been a call. They would have made every effort possible to get to Grand Bahama. Sometimes we mistake it. Maybe I was wrong, maybe, but I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think God was calling me that way. Subsequent events in my life made me understand God's plan for me to go elsewhere to preach. It was still years in the future. For years, I tried to go to places, and I never could leave this island. Until when the time came, God opened the door, and then it became easy for me to go to different places. I remember a man in the Bible who wanted a revival, but he thought he knew what revival was about. He thought he understood God's message. This man, in order to obtain his revival, you know what he did? He hatched a plan in his mind that he was going to force Jesus to do what he believed was the will of God. He decided that he was going to force Jesus to display his power and to overthrow the Romans. So he found a way that he was sure would work. Because Jesus had the power. When they tried to capture Jesus, he just moved from among them. Just disappeared from out of their midst several times. When the devil sent a storm, he stilled the storm. When somebody had leprosy or any disease, he cured it in an instant. He had all the power. And this man said, I'm going to force him to display his power and set up his kingdom. I'm going to sell him to the Romans. And then he will have to demonstrate his power. He will have to, because he thought he was smarter than the Lord, right? He knew that the Lord was here to carry out the mission of restoring Israel. And he thought Jesus was moving too slow. Jesus had the power, but he, Judas, had the wisdom. And so he decided to set up a revival in his own way. You know the end of that story. If you never thought of the story of Judas in that way, that's the truth. You wonder why Judas did it? You wonder why Judas came back and said, I have sinned because I have betrayed the innocent blood. Judas never expected Jesus to die. Judas's problem was not that he sold Jesus to be murdered. His problem was that he thought he was wiser than Christ. And that shows you the danger of us believing we know anything. Our place is not to make decisions or to exercise our smartness. Our place is to listen to the Lord and move as he directs. Amen. Anything other than that, no matter how it may seem to be successful, is a place of extreme danger. Human ideas, human-generated ideas, is the greatest problem in the kingdom of Christ. We know the story in Leviticus 19 and verse 1. And if you, it's not Leviticus 19 and verse 1. I have the wrong reference. But anyway, I'm just going to tell the story instead of looking for it. You know the story of Aaron's two sons. They are working in the temple. Their job is to burn incense. You wonder why their end was so harsh. You go in the temple, okay, they're kind of drunk, stupid. You go to worship God with this kind of disrespect. You are drunk. But they go and they carry out their duties, they burn incense. But instead of the fire from the altar, they carry their own fire. And God has said that the only fire that should be used in the sanctuary service should be the fire from the altar. The fire that God provides. Somebody says fire is fire. Fire is fire. There's a song, a chorus we sing in Jamaica. Fire, 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 fire fall on me. I don't know if you remember, you know the song. And it's a nice little catchy chorus, but we need to be careful of which fire. Okay? So it says that when they offered the strange fire, a fire came out from God and destroyed these two men, these two ministers of God ministering in the temple. We know God is not like this. We know this is not the nature or character of God. But the lessons have to be learned. And the lesson in this example, in this illustration of Nadab and Abihu, that was the names. In this illustration, God was graphically bringing home to our mind the extreme danger of approaching the work of God, approaching the work of God using human methods. The only fire that can carry on the work of God is a fire that comes from God. Amen. Everything else might look like fire, feel like fire, might even burn like fire, but it is a path to destruction if it does not come from God. That is the lesson of Nadab and Abihu. So, I tried most of my Christian life. I'm on the latter years of my life. Okay, I'm 70. People say I shouldn't keep talking about my age, but I kind of say it proudly too. Okay, it's not just that I am saying I'm getting old and I'm getting tired. I'm saying it because I feel like, man, I'm 70. I've been serving the Lord for 47 years. I feel good. Amen. Because some people last 2 years or 6 months. Right? But for 47 years, I'm on the latter years of my life. And my voice is still strong, right? Yes. Yeah, but sometimes I don't have as much zeal to go stand on the road and preach on the street corner anymore. I'm looking for ways that may not be so hard on my back. Or something like that. But back in the old days, I tried to open doors. Okay? But Howard can tell you how many. We bought a tent. We went to different communities, set up the tent. We had meetings. We held crusades. He preached. I preached. We went to Santa Cruz. We went to Spanish Town. We went all over the place trying to keep meetings. I don't know if we were sent or if it was our own impetus, but I'll tell you, we did a lot of things. Back in the early days of the ministry, even before Brother Howard became a part of us, back in the days when we were traveling around in Brother Keith Bennett's van, we gave out tracts in every capital city in the island, and in all the little byways and pathways. We went to every little community. We handed out hundreds of thousands of tracts. On occasion, myself and another brother would get on my bike. It was bikes back in those days. And we'd ride to community after community, stop, hand out tracts. Next community, stop, hand out tracts. We did everything. I had a feeling that I was going to finish the work. I had a feeling. After a while, I realized that I couldn't even finish my parish. I couldn't even manage Jamaica. And it kind of set me to thinking, and I came to realize, I think all of us have realized that, except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. We have many ideas, many projects, but you can't create Revelation 18 verse 1. A mighty angel came down from heaven and the earth was lightened with his glory. I came to realize I can't create that. When we try to take up what God hasn't given to us, which is the middle name of Christian denominations, they take up what God didn't give them. That is why you have so many square pegs in round holes, right? They get a man and they send him to college, and they qualify him with some letters behind his name, and he becomes qualified to be a minister. You put a man in a position that he's totally disqualified for. His qualification is that he went and somebody pumped something in his head. Many times he neither knows God nor understands the ways of God. He's there to make sure that you pay your tithes faithfully and to make sure that you conform to the mandates of the conference or the union or whatever it is. You have so many square pegs in round holes, and the reason is that people, they operate on the basis of their own concept of what God wants. They're not listening to what the Lord says. The scripture says that, I believe, and I have taught, that every Christian has been endued. Every Christian has the authority and the right to exercise every gift that Christ possesses. I've taught this. But I don't believe every Christian has been called for the same purpose. I don't believe this. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 12, verses 28, I'll read verse 28. And I'll read 29 as well. He says, and God has set some in the church, first apostles, secondarily prophets, thirdly teachers. I kind of believe that's where my calling is most of all. I kind of believe that. After that, miracles, then gifts of healings, then helps, then governments, I think it means administrations, then diversities of tongues. Are all apostles? Are all prophets? Are all teachers? Are all workers of miracles? Did God call all of us to the same job? No, I don't think so. I think we all have gifts and we all have the right. I mean, right now my sister is lying sick in the hospital. I've prayed for her. I've prayed and I've asked healing for her. Brother Howard was just up here with you brethren. And we figuratively laid hands on her from here. So we're exercising that gift of healing. But not everybody has the gift, has the ministry of healing. I'm saying the ministry of healing as opposed to the ability to heal. Not everybody has a ministry of healing. There are some people whose duty is to go around and heal people. That is not my ministry. But it doesn't mean that I will never heal anybody. It doesn't mean that I will not exercise the gift of healing. But my ministry is teaching. That's what I will exercise. That's where my heart, when I'm teaching, my heart is burning. My spirit is, my eyes light up, and I feel like I'm where I should be. Somebody else's ministry is helps. As I say this, I can think of two brothers in here in particular. I'm not going to call their names. But I remember them because every time these two brothers, anytime you need any help at all, it's like they've been called for this job. I'll mention somebody else that I knew, a brother from Poland named Slavik. Brother Howard, some of us here. Did he ever come to Jamaica, Howard? He came to, so we know Slavik. His middle name, anytime you're around him, you know what his first word is? What is it, Howard? Can I help something? Can I help? Can I help something? I went to Poland the first time I met him. It was time for us to go and catch the train, I think it was. I was not allowed to carry my luggage. Okay. I looked at him and he was trundling along and his knees were kind of wobbling. He refused to let me carry any. Right? He said, no, it's okay. He refused to let me carry any. And I've known him for years. We met him in America. We met him in Jamaica. His middle name, can I help something? That's his ministry. That's not my ministry. I will help. You call on me to help, I will help. But he dedicated himself to the ministry of helps. I think that's what the Bible means when it says God has put some of the gift of helps. And he mentions different things. Some people are called to a certain thing, and it's what turns on their hearts. I think one of the problems we have in the Christian church is we have people listening to another person's opinion of their duty. And that happened to me. Okay, my duty was defined for me by reading certain books. I won't say which books, right? But my duty was defined for me. And it became my duty to do things that I didn't have a calling for. I remember when I was in college, every Tuesday evening, I went and I put it on my program. Every Tuesday evening was my evening to find people to talk to. Okay? Those of you who know me know that I don't make conversation so easily. I get up here and I'm fine. I lose myself. And I will talk as much as I can, but if you find me face to face or one to one, unless we're very close friends, conversation comes slow to me. I'm not like Howard. He steps into your presence, or people like Jim, step into your presence and it's like you have been buddies for dozens of years. Free and easy to be around. I am much more reserved. My brother Dan also has that ability to be comfortable around people. My brother Tony was like that. I am a person who, it takes an effort. But the call of duty upon me, I made an effort to go out there every Tuesday evening, and I tortured myself trying to talk to people. I was uncomfortable, but I did it because I felt it was my duty. I'm not saying I don't like missionary activity. I like it. But everybody, maybe because of who you are, you approach it in a different way. So, anyway, what I'm saying is that this problem of square pegs in round holes is one of the things that sometimes comes up, especially when you talk about revival. People begin to create things that God has not put upon them. Yet all of us have this mandate. I want to read something. All of us have this mandate. In 2 Timothy 4 and verse 2 it says, preach the word. I know Paul was talking to Timothy, but does it apply to everybody? Sister Palmer, I kind of think that every Christian should take this seriously. Preach the word, be instant in season. To be instant means to be ready, to be quick, to be prepared. In season, out of season. Reprove, rebuke, exhort with all long suffering and doctrine. That's the mandate that the Bible gives us as Christians. But it still doesn't say everybody is to be an evangelist. Not in the sense that we understand evangelism. Not in the sense that we understand teaching. If everybody was supposed to be a teacher, I should be able to call upon any of you and tell you to come up here and give a sermon. I know some people, it's worse than pulling teeth if I ask you to come up here and talk. I can't even get people to pray sometimes. Not even on the online platform, I say, somebody please pray. And I sit there for half a minute, and then it's only the old faithful like Sister Diana or Brother Patrick, they're the same people. The others are silent. They can't even pray in public. Right? Nobody will pray. And if you ask them to come up here, no, not everybody has the same calling. But at the same time, we have the mandate that we are to preach the word in and out of season. There's something else that I want to point to in Ecclesiastes 9 and verse 10. It says, look, here's what it says to us as Christians. Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do. You know the verse? Do it with thy might. Brother Wayne should remember that. And Daniel, right? Because it's the Michael motto. Do it with thy might. Okay, so this is God's message to everybody. Whatever your hand finds to do. But I'm going to tell you, my hand doesn't find the same things to do that Howard's hand finds to do, right? I would never get my hand chopped like that, right? Because I wouldn't be under a car engine pulling out whatever he was pulling out. My hand is not going to find that to do. But he does it, and he does it with his might. One of the things I will say is that I appreciate Howard is maybe more than 50% of the success, more than 50% of the success of this camp meeting and this campsite. Himself and Sister Caroline. There are others who are involved, but their input is kind of extraordinary, outstanding, you know, in building this campsite, in helping to maintain it, in doing the donkey work. Anything that goes wrong, it's good to have him around. So, he does what his hand finds to do with his might. But please don't blame me if my hand doesn't sometimes find the same thing to do. Okay? But God says, whatever he gives you to do it with your might. You're not called to be a Howard. You're called to be somebody else. And what you are, you know, Darren contributes with the music, so does Brother Ian. Sometimes they do it with too much might. But they give it their all. You know, Sister Sonia decided to take the choir this year because I abandoned it. And she did it with her might. In fact, I saw her even trying to direct, which she wasn't very good at. But she carried us through, and the song didn't turn out too badly. So I appreciate those efforts where somebody takes up something and the Lord puts a burden on you and you say, I'm doing my best with this. That's what God asks of us, right? He doesn't say, all of you go and be an evangelist. Every one of you go and be a teacher. He's saying, look, I've put different people in my kingdom. Each of you do what I give you to do with your might. 50 people, 60 people doing the best you can with your might. That's a revival. That's a kind of Christian fellowship that is unstoppable. Because everybody is doing his part. What is a problem is where one or two people are carrying all the burden and the rest of us are sitting back and just drifting with the tide. That is what God has not called us to. But let me move on. I won't even read this because everybody knows it, okay? You're all familiar with the parable of the 10 virgins. And there's something about the parable of the 10 virgins because there is an inevitability in the parable that I know concerns people, but I look at the parable and I ask myself, can I break the parable? Do you believe you can break the parable? Let me ask you the question, do you believe you can break the parable of the 10 virgins? Some of you are not hearing me. When I say break it, I mean, do you believe you can change what the parable says? The parable says, when the bridegroom tarried, what happened? Do you believe you can change that? Who says yes? Then Jesus was wrong. I mean, it's a prophecy. It's a prophecy. If you can change that, then Jesus was a false prophet. All right. So that's a paradox. That's a paradox because it might seem that I'm saying just relax and let things go as they are. Right. So let me explain what I am saying because I don't believe I can turn Jesus into a false prophet. It doesn't mean that I am justifying the condition we find ourselves in. And yet, in a way, I'm justifying it. Because if Jesus says it is so, notice, I want you to look at the parable. Is there anybody in the parable that Jesus condemns? No. Well, except those who didn't carry oil in their lamps. He doesn't openly condemn them, but tacitly they are condemned. The criticism is on them. He does not criticize them for falling asleep. Read the parable. Everybody sleeps, but he does not criticize. Jesus does not blame anybody for falling asleep. He might even blame himself. Because he says, while the bridegroom tarried. If you say he blames them for sleeping, then you could say he blamed himself for tarrying. Their condition of sleeping is a consequence of something that happens that almost seems inevitable. And I'll tell you that if I'm waiting for, when I was a boy and I was waiting for daddy to come home, if he was gone on a far journey and then he was coming back, if he was even bringing gifts, I eventually fell asleep. If he was longer than the time I expected. It's a human thing. Jesus says that the parable of the 10 virgins is that because the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept. And so I want to ask you, what does it mean to slumber and sleep? It means that the zeal that was there or that will be there is not present. No matter how Howard and I talk about getting up and leaving a job, giving up your job and going and preaching the gospel 24/7. If you're smart, you're not going to listen to us. Okay? I did that in my life because I was called. I am one person in 10,000. I don't want anybody to follow my example because I am not the pattern. You have to listen to Christ and hear what he says to you. Amen. For me to impose on you to go and do, one of the things I've learned in my ministry, I don't tell people certain things. I give them general guidelines. That if somebody comes to me and wants counsel, should I marry this woman or not? I am never more going to tell anybody yes or no. I'm going to give you biblical guidelines and let you make up your mind. I remember a sister I counseled to get married to a guy. She was living with a guy for about 3 years. And she wanted to become a Christian. I said, you marry him or you leave him? She decided to marry him. Afterwards, she says, his brother David caused it. Right? When the marriage got into problem, she says, brother David caused it. Right? And there are certain things I make up my mind. I'm not going to tell people, it wasn't you. There are certain things I say I'm not going to tell people. I'm going to give you biblical guidelines. Because nobody is to be regarded as your instructor. You are to listen to nobody except Christ. One of the things I've said at this camp meeting is that people have found a way to bypass Christ. I see you, Tracy, just a second. They have discovered a way to remain in the Christian fold and to try to obtain the benefits of Christ while bypassing the relationship with Christ. And one of those ways is that they look to human beings. I said, this man is a Christian. This man is a Christian leader. So I can ask him for counsel. I don't need to go and find Christ for myself. That's what a person is actually saying. Now, I know that a lot of people say they go to Christ and they come away with crazy ideas. And I'm not apologizing for that. Judas was one of them, right? The fact that there are Judases and there are people who misunderstand and they don't know Christ and they come in the name of Christ is no reason I'm going to tell you to not listen to Christ. Look here. You may be confused about going to Christ. So you know what you do? Come to David. What kind of solution is that? This is why I understand my duty to be, I'm going to keep on talking about Jesus till the cows come home. I will never stop. And those who get tired of hearing it, you got to close your ears or maybe listen to somebody else, because I will never stop talking about the necessity of the living relationship with Christ, because what else is there? Sister Tracy, you can go ahead.
I just wanted to ask a question.
Yes. Yes.
10 virgins, you said that they all slumbered and slept.
Yes.
So you are equating it to inactivity. But
I'm not equating it to inactivity. I'm saying that is one manifestation that people will point to. Yeah, but I certainly wouldn't limit it to that.
I'm just looking on what I see in Christianity.
Yes.
When the bridegroom comes, that's when Christ's second coming, right? The second coming, when the bridegroom comes, the finish of certain things, right?
Right. I'm going to ask you to keep it short or wait till the end because of the people online. Yes.
So is it that every person who is between now and that time, they are just dormant?
Well, it would be presumptuous of me to say it's every person, but I will say that In the parable, Jesus is speaking about the condition of the Christian church. And the condition of the Christian church is generally one of slumbering and sleeping. He's not talking about individuals. I'm not saying that there have not been unusual people along the way who rose or who were lifted above the situation. But God has planned for the state of sleeping. There's something that most of us believe. Right? I'm not going to look at the biblical basis now, but most of us believe that the world will end round about 6,000 years. Am I right? Yeah. One person believes it. Yes. Okay. Yes. Most of us are kind of aware of that. We are aware of the fact that about the 6,000 year, we expect things to come to an end. God planned this. It's designed in the creation story. If you look at the Bible carefully, there are stories, there are illustrations, there are types that point to a 6,000 year reign of sin before Jesus comes. So, in other words, even though the wise virgins are sleeping, the wise virgins sleep along with the foolish, how do you change prophecies of that nature? How do you change prophecies like that? And you say, I mean, that was me 20, 40 odd years ago, right? I'm going to finish the work. I'm going to do it. I'm going to light up this world because I have the zeal and I have the power. I didn't realize that I also had the ignorance. Right? Didn't know what I was talking about. There are certain things in the Bible that clearly illustrate that God has a plan that He's working on. He's working on a plan. So, is sleeping a necessity? I don't say it's a necessity, but I would say it's almost an inevitability, which means that it's almost certain you can't do otherwise. How are you going to get up and give up everything and you don't know when Jesus is coming? How are you going to do it? I am ready. I'm ready. I mean, ready to do what? I guess I don't have a job. This is my job. But there are people, Ian is in a job. Most people are in a job where they have to go 9 to 5, or they have to hustle, they have to pay rent, they have the school fee. What are you going to do? Stop living and say, I've seen people do it. And in every case, it ends up in disaster. Every case. When a community of people do it, it doesn't work. Why? Because their move is based upon two things. Number one, it's based upon the idea that I am going to finish the work. So I have moved out to do it. And secondly, I'm going to ensure that Jesus comes soon before disaster overtakes the move that I've made. When 2 years pass, 4 years pass, 10 years pass, and the pressure begins to come in, and you find that the world is moving along, and you are struggling to subsist, and you're not making any impact on the world, disaster follows. Every movement like this that I've seen. But the Bible says, Jesus says that at midnight there is a cry made. Something happens. In God's design and God's plan, something happens that every fool who has a mind and who has eyes to see knows that I must give up my connection to ordinary things now and forever. Something happens. That's what the Bible says. If you read, there are prophecies about it all through the Bible. It says that in Isaiah 27, that it shall come to pass in that days that the great trumpet shall be blown. And God's people shall come from different places. In Revelation 18 says that an angel comes down from heaven and the earth is lightened with his glory. What we are seeing is a revival that has the divine signature. The divine signature. Not something humanly generated. Not something that men get up and think that they can push God to do what they want to be done. Do you know that the pattern of the Bible shows you that all the truly great revivals have been God designed? And in case you don't recognize it, let me name them. You had Pentecost. You had Passover, even though people may not recognize Passover as a revival. Well, it was the prelude to the revival, because revival means the giving of life. And the giving of life was the third morning when Jesus rose from the dead. That's when the church received life, and it was the prelude and the beginning to the greatest revival that ever happened on this planet. even though the power came at Pentecost. This was a divine event that God orchestrated and carried out. What was the place of God's people in this? They were simply empty vessels, cooperating as best as human beings can cooperate with what God told them to do. That's all they did. You can imagine Peter, James, and John trying to create Pentecost. What did Jesus say to them? Wait until you be endued with power from on high. And if they had tried to go without the power, it would have been vain and foolish, pointless. I want you to understand that I'm not encouraging or condoning apathy. It is still true that whatever your hand finds to do, do it with your might. It's still true that there is a problem in the Christian church. It's a problem in our congregation that maybe too few people are doing it with their might. Too few people are content to let a few people do what needs to be done, and the rest of us sit back and just watch what is happening. This is a guarantee that you yourself will suffer spiritually. The greatest guarantee that you will suffer spiritually is to be constantly eating and never imparting. You will die, you'll get fat and overweight, and you will die. It's inevitable. It's true in the spiritual as in the physical world. So this is not a call to apathy. It's a call to listen to the Lord and act according to what the Lord says to you. The Bible says this: preach the word in season, out of season. You don't have to be a Paul. I mean, there's a song that we used to sing in the church. It says, if you cannot be like the watchman, if you cannot preach like angels, if you cannot speak like Paul, you can tell the love of Jesus. You can say he died for all. Right. The principle is there. Okay? I'd like to teach the children. I'd like to teach the old people. Sister Palmer is a little older than I am. I am at the stage where I have a lot of gray hairs, so it's hard getting gray hairs. All right, Sister Palmer, better you say so. But regardless, I have a duty, and I'm going to be doing it with my might until the other day I find that there's a little rustiness in my voice. Right? Like something in my chest wants to. Look here, I start running. This is not going to hold me up. I'm going to be preaching on my deathbed. Right? I won't stop while I have a voice. Because nobody called me to do this. Nobody called me to do this. I'm doing this because I started listening to the voice of Christ. And I'm sorry that I'm saying I don't want the focus to be on me. I'm talking to you, brothers and sisters. I want what I'm saying to be reflected in your own life, your own perspective. You are a Christian. Those who are not Christians, well, I can overlook you while I encourage you to become a Christian. But if you are not a Christian, I can overlook you. But for those of you who are Christians or who claim to have Christian ambitions, look here. You have a Christ. You have a Savior. How can you say you don't know what to do? How can you say that? How can you be apathetic and lethargic and you have nothing to do in the ministry of Christ? How can you be so? Christ has a purpose for every single one of us. Amen. And if you have not been called to teach or to preach as I have been, there is a calling for you. There's a place for you in the kingdom. There's a job for you in the kingdom. And that is what God expects of us. God doesn't expect you to become the midnight cry. And if he does, he will tell you. Maybe the midnight cry might be Brother Howard. Who knows? Maybe he might give a cry that might reach the entire planet. I don't think so, but I may be wrong. Right? But regardless, I think Paul says something like this, right? Who are you to judge another man's servant? Right? You have one master. But the point is to listen to that master, each one of us. That's what I want us to get today. Maybe the problem is our motive. Well, let me read what I think about that. This applies to me, but I don't know if it applies to you. It says, 2 Corinthians 5 and verse 14, for the love of Christ does what? What does the word constrain mean? I want you to use the strongest meaning you can give it. Force. Force. Compels. It really is not as strong as force or compulsion. It means impel. Impel is something driving you from inside. The love of Christ constrains or impels us. The people who really wake up, brothers and sisters, well, you can't wake up in the sense of the virgin, but the people who are really involved in the work of God, the people who are enjoying and living their Christianity, are people who are driven from inside because they've come to appreciate and understand the love of Christ, and it drives them. What I was really saying is that Sister Palmer may be a little older than many of us here, but if the love of Christ is in her, age is not a hindrance to her. I can tell you that this lady here, she's probably maybe a better distributor of tracts than most of us, right? If she's not distributing tracts anymore, it's because she's walking with a stick now. And maybe she's not in a place where she's meeting people or she can't get any tracts. But anytime she can get any, Sister Palmer is maybe one of the older people in here. And she is not reluctant to go out there and share. And nobody has to send her. When she kept coming for tracts, I was a little bit amazed because I'm thinking this old lady needs to sit down and keep herself quiet. But no, you can't slow down people who are constrained by the love of Christ. I'm not working for any of you. You are not working for me. We have a Lord and Master, and we should hear his voice and respond to that voice. Nobody should have to be in constant appeals for us to be more zealous or more alive or anything like that. No, no. Where is your Christ? Where is your religion? Look at what Paul said about his preaching. I could say the same too, right? Paul says, though I preach the gospel. It's 1 Corinthians 9, 16 to 17. He says, for though I preach the gospel, I have nothing to glory of. I'm preaching and I have nothing to boast about. Why? For necessity is laid upon me. Yea, woe is upon me if I preach not the gospel. What he's saying is if I don't preach the gospel, I'm tormented. If I don't preach the gospel, something is riding me and I can't get away from this burden. I have to preach. Therefore, I can't get up and boast and say, look, you want to see how much I'm preaching? I can't do this. It's not I who am doing it. It's something that is driving me to do it. So I can't boast because it's not me. It goes back to the spirit that is in you. And I will say the same thing. Okay, I have met upon criticism, discouragement, enmity, all kinds of things. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Stop preaching? What am I going to do? I have nothing else to do in my life. I have nothing else to do with my life. It's the only thing that rests upon my heart. I was teaching in the classroom. I had to stop because all I was doing was giving Bible studies. Right? I said, I'm robbing the government. They're paying me to teach and I'm giving Bible studies. I can't stay here. That's one of the strong reasons why I gave up teaching. I couldn't stay there. Something was upon me, necessities upon me. It was having a good effect on the students, yes. But every time we had a history class or an English class and I found myself teaching the Bible, I said, I have to give this up. I can't keep doing this. But I couldn't stop because it was necessity is laid upon me. And this is the real impetus for doing the work of Christ. It's not that Brother David comes and tells you need to go this or to do that. That is a poor motivation. When Brother David falls on his face, you gone too? Or when he's not able to push you any further, what are you going to do? Go back to go back to your fishing, go back to your job as like Peter and the others. When each person recognized the call of Christ upon his life. Now I'm going to stop. I realize it's late, but I'm just going to read a few more verses and just comment on them quickly before I stop. John 12 and verse 32 gives us the key. In terms of our message and our work, I'm going to put this before all of you. whatever you're looking for, whatever revival or anything, look at what Jesus says. This is forever, the thing that we have before us. Look at what Jesus says. He says, and I, if I be lifted up from the earth, I will draw all men unto me. No revival is qualified to be a revival unless Jesus lifted up is the center of this revival. Amen. Look here, if we lift up Jesus properly at this camp meeting, which we struggle to do, because we are kind of feeling in the dark and finding our way back from generations of darkness. But if we lift up Jesus properly, people will leave this camp meeting and become lights. A revival will spread.
Amen. Amen.
Right. Because Jesus says, if I am lifted up, I will draw all men unto me. That's the first point in the solution I want to point out, that any revival, as we are talking about the search for revival, people talk about revival by saying, you need to pray more, you need to preach more, you need to congregate more. All of those are consequences of the primary thing. Those are just the consequences that happen when Jesus is lifted up. It's Christ who is the center. It's Christ we must put before us. And then our lives will begin to fall into the right order and the right place. Don't try to create the effect. Go for the cause and the effect will take care of itself. Well, I was going to talk a little bit about this, but my time is too... I was going to look at the book of Revelation because I believe that the book of Revelation is the story of God's last great revival. And if you notice how it begins, it is what? It is the revelation of Jesus Christ. That is the key to every revival, the revelation of Jesus Christ. And the last book in the Bible, the last great revival, will come out of a study of this book, because this book is Jesus Christ revealed. That's what it is about. And I'm glad that we are studying it, but I don't have the time to do more than just cursorily mention it today. But I want to put that before you, brothers and sisters, young people, older people, whatever age we might be at, whatever stage of life we might be in. I'm not telling you to go and create a loud cry or create a midnight cry, but I'm putting you in the direction of where all of that comes from. And that direction is to fix your eyes upon God's gift, Jesus Christ. Fix yourself upon a relationship with Jesus. And when that relationship is in place, you will know what you should do. Nobody's going to have to push you, draw you, drive you. You will be constrained by the love of Christ. I know it's late, and we're probably hungry and tired. I'm going to stop at this point, but I really hope that at least the focus and the emphasis we will keep before our minds. And this will be our theme for the remainder of the camp meeting and after we leave it.